let me kind of summarize kind of the problem statement here. The problem statement that you have is that you have a highly specialized care delivery that you're providing to patients, and there's just not enough specialists to cover that. And that's not a problem of, it's not even necessarily a cost problem. It's not that you can't just hire enough physicians. The expertise doesn't even exist in the marketplace. So that fundamentally was actually that I've been trying to figure out for menopause, because the same thing there. Yes, we have lots of women's health providers, lots of nurse practitioners that are women's health trained. However, none of them have training in menopause. Even the OBGYNs don't have training in menopause. So how do you solve this problem? So so you can solve it in a couple ways, right? One, and so this is kind of how our company's actually structured. So you'll see kind of like why we operate this way, but you'll start to pull out what makes sense for you. You cannot scale a company to such a massive population if you can't meet the demand of the service provided to them. You're going to hit a bottleneck. You're going to hit an upper level. We burn through trained NPs within a couple months. Like, you can't find them anymore. So what do you do now? So one, teach. So, that's where, for our business, we have an academy side. So we teach clinicians, we teach doctors, we teach nurse practitioners, PAs, how to do this kind of care. So that's a way to solve it. But that's not a recruiting strategy. That's a product strategy. But in the ecosystem, that's one thing that you kind of have to do. The second thing that you then do is you end up basically having to form your own internal training program. Dr. Hirsch, my co-founder, solid experience in teaching clinicians how to do menopause care. She was fellowship trained in it. You kind of had to hire green NPs, meaning maybe they had a couple of years experience in the market. If you think about like a physician has gone through medical school and years of residency, meaning real patient care independently before they are now ready for seeing patients. And even when they're seeing patients, they're brand new. And so like you kind of want to give them some real world experience. In the NP world, they basically go through medical school and then they're out in the market. So it's a challenge because you're now basically giving them a residency experience. It's better if you can find NPs who've had at least 3 years of real world experience out there, especially if you're going to do telehealth, because in the real world, they can go next door and go ask the doctor that's working the office what to do. But in telehealth, who are you going to go ask? So you have to have your own internal mechanism of knowing when to ask, knowing where the limits of your care are, and, and also knowing how to operate inside of a business, operate inside of a system. But once you hire them, the issue is that they are not trained. You have to now train them like 1 to 2 weeks of university. So you might have to create your university essentially to like train your APPs. But it's a cost, right? This is time period that they're not seeing patients, they're not generating revenue. You're putting effort into them, and you don't even know if they're going to be good at it. And so this is like the biggest risk. So like I said, that's why one way you can kind of soften that is by getting somebody who's a little more experienced, but then you do have to train them up. We did have to pay them for that training period. If what you're offering in your business is the benefit of being able to work from home, the benefit of, being telehealth, then you could get away with a reduced rate onboarding period instead of the full rate onboarding period. But it's something that I think each company has to play and test, because it all also depends on like, well, could they go somewhere else where they could make that whole money from day one? So you kind of have to see. Anyway, once they're trained, the way we operationalize it is we start with a low volume period where they're not seeing their full load. They're basically starting with half a load of patients, and they're gradually building up every week or every 2 weeks to more and more patient volume. It gives them time to not only get accustomed to how your system, your EMR, your functions work, but also gives them time to go look up information that they don't know, or to ask or call clinicians who are the experts that they can go to. But then it requires your existing workforce, your existing train clinicians that could be NPs, that could be MDs, who need to have office hours. So again, non-revenue generating time. So office hours, in order for these new NPs to be able to go and ask the questions, the best case is live, like they can literally get on a Zoom room and do a call. An alternative, it's less satisfying, but it's medium effective, is having like a Slack room or some chat room where they can ask those kinds of questions. It's operationally hard, I think, in a telehealth world because it's like on-demand office hours are hard to like run it. I mean, your MD or whoever like is a senior trainer that you might have will have other things and may have other clinicians who also want their attention. So it's kind of a difficult thing, but we played with things like having set hours during the day, like 12 to 3 is when I'll be on, and come whoever wants to come, and we'll have daily joint sessions with as many NPs as can come. But ultimately, you steer them into your kind of asynchronous environment, which would be like a Slack room, chat room environment. Your APP workforce overseen by like regional APP. So like they all have their own essentially supervising clinician who they can check in with, ask questions. It's kind of like having, you know, suggest the ratio, something like 5-to-1 ratio of NPs to a senior NP. And then, at least there's kind of a way, way upwards that your most elite MDs aren't bombarded with everything. There's kind of, middle tiers that helps to kind of balance that question, response scenarios. And but always a MD at the sort of the top layer, and they do monthly or quarterly check-ins with kind of the workforce. So there's kind of these two models, right? And you could go either way. There is essentially a salary model where you have kind of some threshold of minimum, I mean, like 32 hours minimum to be considered full time and then benefits offered and everything. Or are you in like the Uber model where it's like on demand, here's kind of how many, you pick how many hours you want to work, like it's this much or this much. But there is also kind of on like the soft management side of things, the commitment becomes a real problem. If you do go the Uber type model where they're sort of on their own, that, they're going to come and go and it's going to start to become a revolving door. And if you're already spending all this time and money training and they're leaving, that's going to be a problem. So it's a tricky math of um, committing to them upfront, both in terms of training but salary. But now it's your responsibility to fill those hours with real patients that will, give you that return on investment on them. Like, people who you hire for 32 hours or even less, the reality of healthcare, unfortunately, is like you're not working just 32 hours. You're doing documentation, you have meetings, you have other stuff, and it gets really unsatisfying to be part-time, but you feel like you're working full-time still. But, by the time you get done with work and everything. So it's sort of like just be upfront with them. It's a full-time thing, and there's less frustration of like, wait, I was supposed to only do 32 and I've done all these. So this way, it's when you call someone full time, I think mentally you don't think of it as 40, you just think of it as this is all you do. You're committing to the company. So to me, that the management of it was easier with a truly full-time committed person. We have a mechanism to track on-time starts or like within 5-minute start time of that telehealth appointment. So that was important. So we could always see, okay, you have, we always knew you have this many appointments, but did you show up to all of them? And how late are you starting? How long is it taking you to finish? We also tracked on-time chart closures, especially for billing. Not only are you doing the visit, but you're billing accurately and you are closing out your charts on time. Typically, looking at like a 24-hour chart close rate, you kind of need a pretty much a same day chart close at above 90-95%, now, is it perfect? No, like sometimes the NPs are closing and the numbers aren't really reflecting it correctly. So don't get mad at them if they're actually doing the job. It's just how technology is technology. It does its best, but there's leaks in tracking these things. in the first 6 months, which still the extended onboarding, where you would make sure that week over week, you improving on your chart close rate, or if there were any barriers you were running into trouble that we solved them, and understood kind of where the limits were. Because oftentimes it's just mechanical. There's so much mechanical work you have to do, especially with these EMRs, where the one button you didn't press, and that's why it looks like you didn't close it. Like typing in the note is just taking so long. And so you need either support or you need retraining in certain areas. So that built into the first 6 months and week over week what you're doing and ensuring you're hitting quality metrics so that by month 6, you're operating like everybody else, where, whatever like your threshold KPI of benchmark is, that they're getting there. So chart close rate is hitting now at that 90+% rate. Your same day chart close rate, your start visit rate is under 5 minutes, meaning you're finishing that visit in time and starting the next one in time. A brain break from just this intensity of telehealth is pretty intense. Even though you're in your own house, in your own room, there's a lot you're by yourself, which is a whole other kind of stress. Being in a real office with real people, with real humans. Um, and and we built in those brain breaks. But I think that extended 6-month onboarding where regular check-ins and you identified the problems and were able to fix them, that allows you to get that maintenance rate with the clinicians. Output you can measure in two ways, and this is reported back to the NPs in their check-ins. One output is, so the hard output, by hard I mean things that are like EMR chart based. So meaning you had 10 appointments today. Did you do all 10? Did you start on time? Did you close their charts? And did you send in all the prescriptions and labs and whatever you needed to be done? So did you just do the basic clinical work? That's what I would put in the hard category. Then there's a soft category. Soft category is also kind of broken into two subcomponents. One is clinical quality, and the other is like patient satisfaction, you can call it, and that can have lots of different ways to track that. So you can track NPS, you can track patient satisfaction scores. There's a variety of ways. But those two things, so the chart quality, meaning did you adhere to protocols or did you adhere to safe management of a patient? And that done by intermittent chart reviews, clinician chart reviews. And especially in the beginning, they were much more frequent because you wanted to make sure like nothing slipped through the cracks with, again, these are people who aren't trained the way your experts would have been. So you want to catch things right away very early, both for your own liability, but also because you're training them and you're teaching them. So there's kind of that clinical side and clinical quality. And so that would be tracked, like how many charts were not adhering to protocols. And then the other soft side is a patient side, and that's more around NPS scores.